Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to welcome Mark Stross here. He's one of my very good friends, and he's an incredible human being and also one of America's technologists. He produces and protects and promotes America's technology. He knows his stuff. He knows a lot about what's really going on, and he has a pretty powerful message for Americans. Tonight, we're going to talk about some incredible things you need to know regarding internet safety and what we saw in our recent operations at the southern border, the type of aggressive predation we saw, and what you need to know to keep your kids safe. So, Mark, welcome and thank you for being here, my friend. Please give a quick introduction about yourself. There's a lot to say and it's hard to summarize, but tell those who don't know
It
who you
is. And due to the fact that I have a book coming out very shortly, I need to get good at actually presenting myself. So tonight to the audience, I'm going to present myself as America's technologist. I do have my work at the World Trade Center in Penn Station and also the DC subway. This is the area in which I learned about security because I do the visual displays at these given public venues, and they have to be protected. And in doing so, and in building the software that makes all this work, I realized that security was the most important aspect of my daily job because I have to go to sleep at night and know that what I've done is going to work and, more importantly, be protecting the public, the government, and the institution that we're usually piggybacking off of. Let's say it's the MTA, that is the subway system in New York, or let's say it's a train station, and you're dealing with with Amtrak and other clients. All these people demand and have different security requirements. And in addition to that, we're also dealing with incredibly complex systems that have to be honored. So when you're probably wondering why Kim said, I know my stuff. It's because I protect those environments, and it's taught me a great deal.
Powerful. That's so powerful. There's so much that is emerging in technology, and obviously we can't escape it. I love your approach of we can't shut it down. That's not even the point, because obviously there's a lot of positive in technology and the advancements of the internet, but there are also a lot of risks, specifically when it comes to children, that parents and caretakers and everyone who uses the internet need to be aware of because, as we know, what may be appropriate for adults may not be appropriate for children. And there are people who use things like the internet to gain access to children, specifically unsupervised direct access. I know you talk a lot about that. He's on the radio show every week. You talk a lot about this on your website. Before we even get into what we saw at this recent op, because I wanted to tell Mark as my friend and as a technologist, and I want to tell America because I am like, I already knew this was bad, me knowing what I know. This is bad. But what I saw, people need to hear this. People need to understand this because I'm one of the least dramatic people, but this is not okay. So before we even go there, Mark, tell us your theory or your perspective on the general guidelines of what you think should be implemented to protect children in today's online world.
Okay, that's such a great question, and you've really set me up with such a noble course. First of all, to protect children is my number one mission. And the reason it's so important for both Kim and myself is we both had extraordinarily interesting upbringings, and we come to this whole topic with a completely different mindset. Now, I don't have time to go into what makes my upbringing a little bit different than the average, but this is what's so important. What I learned is life is really tough. And there is no such thing as fairness in this world. And so, if a parent is thinking that there will be some form of magical protection out there to protect their kids, it does not exist. And it's really up to each and every one of us to protect our children. So, I hope it's a good setup because I do want to make this incredibly important that we don't sidestep this by saying, well, someone else will figure out a solution. So, I'm fine. I don't have to get involved. In fact, what Kim really is going to be asking for tonight is not really technological information from Mark. It's actually really about getting all of us involved to protect our children. So I'm going to get straight to the meat and potatoes of what she's going to get into. AI, artificial intelligence, and the idea of deepfake technology, deepfake phone calls, deepfake imagery, deepfake photography. I mean, what we are now talking about is that artists, true artists, who are creating art have now been sampled into these AI models. What that means is an AI model is the way that you build a set of rules in the context of a machine, and those rules are churned over very rapidly by a machine looking at the rules, and in this situation, looking at millions and billions of images. And from those images, it's able to construct a rule-based assumption, or we consider it in many ways a diffusion layer of information, and it diffuses all of this known information into a known image. In fact, the number one AI system starts off with static on its canvas, and it takes known AI points of interest. Pretend you asked to see a dog and you've asked to see a house. Well, what is amazing about this AI is it will actually build out of the static a house, not based on its memory, but based on its assumption of what it's seen 1,000 or 2,000 versions of it. And then it creates its own version. It creates a hybrid version of everything it's seen. So it's not even copying. So anyone who says it's going to copy an artist, no, it doesn't do that at all. It actually combines, compares, and creates a narrative by kind of mashing everything together to create this new thing. So why is this important? Because when it's creating this new thing, it can trick our children. When it's creating this new thing, it can trick us. When it's creating this new thing, it can become quite scary, especially when you have truly successful artists realizing that they could create a beautiful canvas, pretend a steampunk, if anyone knows what that is, but it's kind of a version of the future, and create that steampunk image. And they could probably take a week to create the image. Now, the AI can create unlimited versions of that steampunk image, literally instantaneously. Now, if I put the AI systems that we have today that you can get online, which are free, everyone can actually take a look at these things. But if I put any of these to the test, like Leonardo, that's just one of the new systems that's available, at most within 7 to 10 minutes, with incredible sampling, I can create a work of art. I'm going to prove it to you guys, because right now there have been competitions where people have brought in AI generated images. And what do you think's winning in art competitions? AI. So let's begin with that. Let's just begin with the idea of AI winning art competitions. If AI is so good at drawing what we take so long to do, it does it without a soul. It does it just out of rules. And it does it because it knows how to do it, because it's got a narrow set of rules also. And it just does that better than we can do it, faster than we can do it. So, what makes you think, as a parent, you can protect your children against a technology that can actually duplicate your voice, duplicate your image in real time, and actually stay ahead of you? What about the fact that you could actually deep fake your mom or your dad or yourself or your children on a phone call and type in what you want to say and have the computer actually say it in your voice or a likeness of your voice? I saw an interview from CBS where reporters actually went to an expert. He dumped different voices into the computer, and he fooled his mom because the computer was actually speaking to his mom, not himself. His mom thought it was himself. It was him, the reporter.
I mean,
So that's where we're at. So Kim, now tell me your story, because I'd love to hear what happened to you. But I just wanted to set the stage that AI today can beat artists in competitions, is real time, does not need, on average, needs about a minute worth of training to be able to duplicate your voice. It needs probably 100 images to truly duplicate your likeness in a video. And it can actually sample videos of you and then duplicate you. Now, one more thing. This is really far out. This will blow your mind. Are you ready, Kim, for this one? This doesn't have to come from you. Your friends might be doing social media. You might be at a restaurant. You're talking in the background, and they take those samples and feed them into the machine to duplicate yourself. So you weren't even the target of the video. All it needs is the construct of your voice or the construct of your likeness. So you don't even have to be the focus. So when people say I'm safe because I never post to social media, well, you're not safe because your friends do. I just want to make that point. And in today's world, the odds of you going anywhere in a public environment where you're not caught on some camera is probably highly unlikely. So that's the other side of this. So I just want to scare people right up front so that when we're talking about this, they don't make an assumption like this is just another story. Because Kim, your story is not another story. Your story is really evil. Your story is about stuff that we have to stop. And if we don't get this right, we will lose our kids. And that's going to sound like I'm exaggerating and being dramatic. I'm not.
Absolutely.
So
One of the things we're going to summarize some of the things we saw during our recent op where with the aggressive online predation that I need parents to know about. But I also want to make sure people stick around to hear the solutions and what they can do. It's one of the reasons I wanted to go live with Mark Stross, first of all, to tell him as a friend, but I was like, let's record this discussion because it's going to be very helpful for a lot of people to know the easy things they can do to protect their children. Like, we're not trying to keep people off the internet or tell them to raise their kids under a rock and prevent them from experiencing the world. We're trying to help them experience the world in a safer way, in a more informed way, and with the tools and resources that can help them preempt this kind of stuff, handle it. But one of the main things I need people to understand is how bad it is. And once again, this is not about inciting fear. In fact, this is about empowerment, because if you know the enemy, if you know the tactics, and if you know what's out there, you can more effectively safeguard your children. So I will say this, let me just cue it up with the following. In my 33 years of existence, in my adult years, in my rather unique upbringing and experiences, I never saw or heard or imagined the things I saw and read when I was posing as a 14-year-old girl on the internet for 2.5 days. That's the reality.
Tim, I don't know if it's possible for you to show the image that you actually used of yourself, but when you sent that over, at first I was going, "What? What is Kim doing?" And then I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, she's showing me an AI version of herself young. And then you filled it in with text. So you kept me in mystery. But I saw your graphics and I was going, wow, why would you be doing that? So why did you do that?
So I will describe it to the audience. The truth is that these operations are still underway and more arrests are on the way. And I worked tirelessly to ensure that these arrests would lead to conviction. So because it's an ongoing case, I would show the picture because I want people to see it, but I'm going to explain it to people so that they can imagine this. So here's the reality. Thank God for my baby face. But that being said, we used AI technology to also create a look that was unmistakably childish, meaning taking existing photos of myself, and just as a disclaimer, not that it would justify it the other way, but these were not sensual photos or like type images. The following was a little girl sitting like this, sort of an innocent, almost scared, very naive look. Any adult that looks at that photo could not mistake that child for older than maybe 16. Definitely no older than 16. Looks more like 12 to 14 years old. Am I right, Mark?
Absolutely. That was what was so trippy. So Kim comes out on my phone looking like a little baby. I mean, you did, like a very young girl. And so what did you do with those images?
So this very young, very innocent look. So let me just summarize by saying, if you have not watched our documentary Contraland, I would like to encourage all the viewers to do so, because it shows you a glimpse of what we do. So for those who don't know, welcome. Veterans for Child Rescue is a nonprofit. We're based in the USA. Our mission is to make our country safe for children by exposing and eradicating child trafficking and exploitation. People may not understand that our country is not safe for children, and that's not just a nice tagline, that's the reality. So to watch our documentary Contraland, you can go on our website. It's Veterans for Child Rescue, v4cr.org. Watch our documentary as your homework, because you'll see a glimpse of our counter-trafficking operations and what we do to arrest and convict predators. We have a 100% conviction rate. So we have a very high standard for arrests, and we hope to maintain that 100% conviction rate. As we know, most bad guys do not end up behind bars, but even fewer stay there. So convictions is a whole other process, involving the legal system, which is long, slow, and boring. But that being said, this past week, we conducted an operation in Texas. We had a few different operational templates. One of them, which I'm just going to summarize because these operations are still underway, involved me and other adult females posing as children on the internet. So like Mark was saying, I used an AI filter or version of my adult self, which looked unmistakably childlike, the most innocent baby face you can imagine. And here's what happened. Now, let me back up and say this. I work in social media marketing. This is my expertise. I've been doing this for over a decade. So my plan, what I thought I would have to do in order to essentially identify or find these predators, was to create an online profile and then go find people to find me, meaning like, comment, and go watch live streams and go get noticed. That was my plan. Here's what happened instead. And all of this is documented, and we will make these people famous. Here's what happened. I am not joking. And I sent Mark an example of this. Within seconds of creating an online profile as this little girl, as an unmistakable baby face little girl, within seconds, predators were pouring in. Not just things like, hey, baby, you're so cute. Do you have a boyfriend? Not just that. Let me also pause and say this. No non-predatory adult would click on the profile of this baby face girl unless they were a predator. Okay, so this was an obvious child, and all these men sliding into my DMs within seconds, ranging from messages such as, hey, baby, you're so sexy, up to the most unimaginably vile things that I, as an adult, have never seen, heard, or imagined was possible. I'm not saying this to be dramatic. I am actually calmly explaining what actually turned the stomachs of seasoned warriors, veterans, and law enforcement who were in the room with me. Now, our criteria, not only for arrests, but for the general process, is very high, meaning we could not solicit, nor would I ever want to. But the point is that this was not us flirting with guys. This was me creating a profile and letting them speak, letting them incriminate themselves. We could not say very, like, it would have been easier if I could have interacted like a normal teenager might. But no, we just let them talk. And I need parents to understand that within seconds, the predators were pouring in, and within minutes, they continued. Within hours, I probably interacted with around 300 predators in the 2.5 days that I was posing as a 14-year-old girl on the internet. The following was included in our criteria. We had to let the predator know our age. We had to say it at least once, but ideally 3 times. They had to know our age in writing. Once again, you could not mistake the baby face picture, but just to make it sure, we had to tell them our age at least twice. They would then send harmful material, harmful images, which, by the way, is a felony, so look forward to more arrests coming soon. Harmful images, and I probably saw around 200 as a 14-year-old girl on the internet for 2.5 days. They had to describe their intent. Their intent, once again, was the most vile things you cannot imagine as an adult. As an adult female, now granted, I'm not on these types of apps, these like meetup type spaces. I'm not there. That being said, as an adult female, I have never received those types of interactions, nor did I even imagine that this would be the desire of a grown man, specifically not with a child. It would be disgusting for a man to say that to me as an adult, but they were saying this to this baby face 14-year-old girl, unashamedly, completely emboldened. They had no context, not only for the harm and the irreparable damage they would be causing this developing child, but for the repercussions. They were so emboldened. There were serial predators, and they were so fluent in this language. It was disgusting. They would admit to me. I heard when I said, by the way, when I told hundreds of predators my age, less than five stopped talking to me or blocked me. Now, as a general PSA to humanity, and I'm also preaching this to myself to restore some faith in humanity, this is not obviously reflective of men. However, this is people on these types of platforms who are soliciting this type of baby face child. So within that realm, within that target audience, if you will, less than 5 stopped talking to me or blocked me when I told them I was 14. I heard, no problem. There was a complete disregard and a continuation of the harmful content and the explanations of what they wanted to do. I heard, no problem. I wish you were younger. I'm glad you look younger. They would describe the amount of other victims. These people are ridiculously stupid. So let's just say this. They're easy to catch, but here's a rhetorical question. Why am I the one doing this, hunting and fishing and catching these predators? Why is this not an operation happening 24/7 in Washington? That's a rhetorical question, but I need parents to know that that is the experience that a young girl may have on the internet. I need parents to know that we are not fear-mongering when we tell them to monitor their child's internet activity, to implement safeguards. And again, I want to talk about more solutions, which Mark Stross is going to share here shortly. I just need to paint the picture in order to have an understanding of what we interfaced, what this type of serial predator does. And I want to say one more thing before we unpack this further. Me and 2 other women were having these conversations with hundreds of men. It was a full-time job. We could have used more help. I had to actually narrow down my targets because there was such a big influx.
Wow. I mean, when you tell the story, it is so impactful. How fast did it take between the time you posted to you got your first post?
Seconds. I'm not even joking.
Seconds.
I started filming it. I would create a profile and I would film. And I will make this famous. Once these guys are in prison, everyone's going to see their face. But the point is that this did not even take a minute. There was like a real-time pouring in. It was raining predators. It was raining predators.
I have so much to say about this issue, actually. I mean, I really do. And I'm going to start off with this. Kim and I did a Veterans for Child Rescue piece about 4 months ago, in which I was extremely intense, in which I talked about this exact thing, about the grooming and about how fast it occurs. And to have Kim now participating in an actual sting operation using the techniques that were outlined, capturing people by mimicking being young, and then seeing grown men come after these beautiful people and girls and others. Remember, it's also happening with boys, so we have to be very clear on this. It's happening on both sides. So what is really harmful here is that parents truly believe their government is here to help them. Unfortunately, and this is really sad, but the government is vested in many of these organizations that they actually are also supposed to control. So it's kind of hard, like if you're relying on Amazon Web Services to run the military, and to go to Amazon and burn it to the ground for saying, why are you allowing predatory websites to be hosted on Amazon services? Or why, Facebook, are you not shutting down um, these people that are getting into youngsters' feeds? And then you're wondering, well, why is this all happening? And it's not money. I want to make this clear. It's more to do with people lobby each other, and before you know it, everyone is so incestuously or all so interconnected that they don't know how to detangle. And our government, unfortunately, has been proven with the Twitter files with Elon Musk and all the work Elon Musk did, that we now found out the FBI was politically involved in creating an agenda for the country. And we now know that all these so-called conspiracy theories that the government was involved to create a propaganda narrative, what is true. Therefore, what we have to realize is while the government has become political and a political arm of a given party that's in power, then it also means that different interests are not going to be protected against, and other interests will be. And I think, especially after the Epstein files, if everyone knows Epstein and his private island, he was a child predator, and the ultra rich would go to the Epstein Island to have these parties. Well, 10, 15 years ago, the who's who of power all went to that island, and not one person's been held to account. Not one person has really been sacrificed beyond the people actually running the island. What about the people that went to the island? And since those people are our leaders, doesn't that kind of suggest in a weird way that they're kind of condoning this misbehavior? Since we now know the island was infamous for sex parties. So my point is, that's the morality behind the scenes of our government. And what we've noticed, and it's duly noted, that when they get caught, very little happens. And also, this other adage that, more happens to Republicans than Democrats, well, that is true at the moment. I don't know if that's always been true, but right now in America, there are two different legal systems, one for one set of principles and one for another set of principles. And then we have another problem, truth decay. And you are really getting into this one big, huge topic. Truth decay is a subject that the Rand Corporation got into, in which is the idea that Americans have lost faith in their government and in their institutions, and that this happens. And when this happens in a society, it takes a lot of effort to get truth back into the commonality of a community. Because right now, our communities are divided. We don't have commonality of purpose. And that used to be, by the way, patriotism. That used to be our commonality of purpose. We would be patriots. So, based on patriotism, parents would be protecting each other because they were Americans. But today, being an American for at least one third of the country is a really nasty identifier. Like, wow, America is kind of a shabby place, doesn't have a good track record. So, unfortunately, you then have other patriots that, of course, feel the absolute opposite, but they're infighting. While all that's happening, where does it leave our children? Well, I'll tell you where it leaves it, in my opinion, extremely ignored and neglected. Because in order to deal with this problem, you have to deal with the tech giants. In order to do that, you have to change the way you're purchasing and operating the government. And I believe that's why this is so intense. So then people say to me, well, can we change? Elon Musk has proven that you can change. You don't have to be a billionaire to change. Look at all the parents going to school districts and actually taking their voice to this board meeting and changing the board, changing their school institutions, changing their community. So if anyone says to me we can't change this country, no, that's completely wrong. That's laziness. All you have
Absolutely.
to do is get involved and do something.
Absolutely.
So,
But to
so
your
finally, go ahead.
I think it's important for people to realize, though, because to your point, something must be done. And the powers that be can't be bothered. Sarcasm. It is up to us, it is up to we, the people, not only to inform and educate our children, but to create a safe environment for them, to change the culture, to make it an intolerant to predators. It is not okay that these people are not only thriving, but that they are interacting without limitation with children on the internet. So I want to hear what you're going to say next, but real quick pop quiz, true or false? It is absolutely detectable. It is absolutely possible to detect when grown, creepy men send inappropriate, harmful images to minors. True or false?
Absolutely true. And the same AI that made you young could have also detected that a young kid is speaking to someone that is older. And it doesn't take a lot of rules, does it? If we can create AI that can follow rules to create beautiful imagery, does it seem so inconceivable that we could create AI to actually determine when predators were doing their deal? Yeah, I think it'd be very easy, actually. If we put the same amount of effort to make a buck into protecting people, we could do it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
One more thing I need people to realize. As I was chatting with these perverts, the other two women in the room sometimes would be chatting with the same pervert, meaning we had a template, we were multitasking, we were hunting. These perverts were on their hunting too, with us and God knows how many other children simultaneously. This is a serial predation. I wish I could explain without disgusting you how fluent they were in this predatory language, in their tactics, in their techniques. And as a grown woman, obviously I was outsmarting them. But that being said, if they're preying on a child, specifically the type of age and demographic that they explained to me that they wanted to partake in, children do not stand a chance, not against the AI, not against the algorithms, and not against these predators who are able to access them without limitations. That is not okay. And once again, although the elected officials can't be bothered to make an impact, although there's nothing being done by the people who should be using our tax dollars to do this is simply not okay with us. And Mark, we are going to stop this. We are going to build a solution that is going to rip apart this infrastructure. This is not okay. This is a solvable problem, though. To your point, there is technology that we will utilize against this evil. So stay tuned.
Oh, I totally agree with that. In fact, I just want to say that, Kim, you're right. I mean, this is just a complete farce and lie that the same companies that built the AI could not have protected the kids first and put up guardrails before they actually created the monster. But human history has proven that we tend to only see the evils of our way after we do things like drop an atom bomb and then go, oh crap, it actually can do a lot of damage. And then we figure out how we're going to mitigate that damage. And by the way we lived in cities changed right after World War II based on people realizing if we grouped together, we would actually be blown up. So that's what created the suburbs. And if people didn't know that, that is absolutely true. So these are the weird things that happen in life that most of us don't realize is that we as the humans race do not anticipate very well the impact of what we do. We don't. And then when we do things, then we're very slow most of the time to react until things become a crisis. And that is actually very American. We were very slow to respond in World War II, and then we have to really catch up. And I think America right now needs to catch up on this AI issue and the problem of grooming and the problem of people being online. And these predators need to be taken out right at the shins. The shins is so easy. I mean, the same technology that can do all this magic should also be protecting everyone.
Couldn't have
So
said
I
better.
totally agree with you. Now I had too much tea coming onto this podcast. I rarely do this, but I'm going to get off camera for a second. You can talk. I will be right back. I
No,
had way too much tea.
no problem. I'm going to go ahead and answer some comments in the meantime. I want to, again, welcome everyone who's here and joining us tonight. For those who don't know who we are, Veterans for Child Rescue is a nonprofit. We're based in the USA. Our mission is to make our country safe for children. We do this by exposing and eradicating child trafficking. Exposure is a huge part of our mission because it comes down to awareness. The sad reality is that the topics we're discussing today are topics that some people still think aren't true. They think it's a theory. They think this isn't real. We are here to unpack this evil for people in a way that not only brings it close to home and hopefully makes people care enough about it that they will actually start protecting their children and the children in their communities, but that also creates an environment that is intolerant to predators. The way it works right now is that predators have more safeguards, more protection, and more liberties than victims. Predators are able to operate without fear because there is very little recourse for the type of serial predators that we encounter. I'm going to recap what I've been discussing for those who are just joining us. And by the way, please share this because it's important that people understand this information. This last week, we did an operation in Texas, and one of our operational templates is that we posed as children on the internet. We had a total of 2.5 days to do this. And by the way, we made some arrests, and there's a lot more arrests to come. So I am just loosely explaining this particular aspect of this operation that is still in progress because I cannot hold this in. I need parents to know. I texted my siblings as this was going on, and I said, please don't give your kids a phone. Okay, thanks, bye. This was such an influx of predators within seconds. Within seconds. This is on video, and I will make this famous. I need people to know. I am saying this calmly but emphatically because they need to know what I've seen. They need to know that this is what happens to children on the internet. There's a lot involved with keeping your children safe. There's communication. There's making sure your children can come to you and talk about things, and that you'll listen, and that you'll take them seriously, and that you're that person that will take the appropriate action, that will advocate for them. You're not going to get the children in trouble for reporting these creepy predators that prey on them on the internet. No, no, no. You're going to protect your children. You're going to implement safeguards. You're going to help prevent them from even experiencing this. So we will continue to unpack this whole topic. Mark Stross is a technologist. He's a cybersecurity expert. He is involved with a lot of things within the space. And I wanted to not only explain what I saw to him, but I wanted to brainstorm solutions because we are going to solve this problem. I am not okay with any child, not my nephews or niece, not any child growing up in this type of world where it's only getting worse. It is not getting better. There are no safeguards. These big tech companies are making millions off the exploitation of children. Oof.
Oh,
So much to say
you
here.
said a mouthful there. Let's keep in mind that most social media companies, Meta or Facebook now, is starting to decline, and they're going to go the way of MySpace in the next 20 years, in my opinion, because they lost the competition against TikTok and Instagram, which they do own Instagram. So there's at least there's an upside for them in some ways. However, all social media has wanted is to capture the youth. They wanted to capture the youth because they want to actually have the youth buy into their products from birth to grave and cradle to grave. And they really want us to actually be, well, to be delusioned into thinking that they're there to take care of us, that if we give them our loyalty, they'll give us back their loyalty. But what we now know, and again, Twitter files have been very useful to just take away this all the way from conspiracy theories to reality, is that most social media companies went out of their way in the last 10 years, especially after Trump became president, to basically decide who has the right to speak and who doesn't have the right to speak. And in exercising their bias and their censorship, they're also indicating extremely um, um, just going to let the train go by. They're really allowing people to think, they want people to think that they're creating security and that they actually care about them. The truth is, at the end of the day, when you really look at it, why 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 aren't our kids protected? No, I'm very serious on this because when you go to Google, when you go to Facebook, and anyone can do this, go to the terms of service, look at the license agreements, look at all the mumbo jumbo that's been discussed about how they're going to secure your passwords, protect you, not do predatory practices. And then we find out Facebook sold all of our data when it was convenient for them, when they were underneath the radar, um, to analytics companies. And this stuff was no longer our delusion. This was actually fact. And then we find out that Google has been selling our data 100 different ways to add them, that when you went to a Google search page, it's all created with links. Each one of those links goes to an ad, and each one of those ads is there to solicit. So going back to our kids, Google just wanted our kids to go to those pages and use the links, because every time they pressed on a link, they would make money. So let's get into the predator stuff. So you're saying, talking about the dating app. So what the hell is a 14-year-old kid being allowed on a dating app to be able to be seen by an adult? Oh, or more importantly, on Reddit or any of these other services, how come are the predators getting into kids' accounts? And more importantly, if they're supposed to be actually uh, what's age restricted, then why is the age restriction not working? And how come can kids so easily get into age restricted trouble by lying about their physical age and then being put at complete risk when we know that kids are going to try to bust into things and rebel and if mom and dad says this is a bad idea, most kids will gravitate towards at least being experimenting a little, and they might want to see what's on the other side. So when you say don't go there, they go. But why?
Why is this
Why has
allowed?
society abdicated its position in protecting our kids? The
Yep.
only thing I can come up with all of my research and writing the book, is that those kids became a product. And once they became a product, well, they don't need protecting. They just need to be genned up to buy more product, to never stop watching the product, and to be a victim, no, not a victim, to be enhanced
A consumer.
by the consumerism.
Absolutely. We have a lot of different people that we work with in this space. There's this group called Mom Army, and they are advocates for children. And I had a live stream with the founder last week, and she said it so well. She said, there's no money in protecting children. There's money
Well,
in
I love that.
excluding them. Exactly. It sums it up, because the symptoms, you could say, the side effects of child exploitation makes a lot of people a lot of money. That's a very long story short, but that summarizes some things people need to understand about this battle we're in to protect children and their innocence. There is a war on children. This is intentional. Let me unpack this for those who don't fully understand where I'm coming from. I'm not even going to get into the intentional opposition that we face. I'm not going to get into the intentional censorship and suppression of this message of people protecting children, the amount of creative workarounds we have to implement in order to even get this message out. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go right here. To anyone who has received a community guidelines warning on any social media platform for certain words they used, answer me this, Mark. This is a rhetorical question. I just want to unpack this for the audience. You asked, why could a child create a profile and be allowed on these apps? So, granted, any person of any age can create a profile and use any picture and say they are any age. So, point one, just because it's a kids only platform, just because it's YouTube Kids, does not mean adult predators are not there. Point one. But point two, when I'm saying in writing that I'm 14 years old about 200 times in the span of 2 days, tell me to my face that these platforms don't know that. When I'm using a picture that is obviously a baby-faced child that could not be older than maybe 16 if you're pushing it, tell me to my face these platforms don't know that. When these predators are sending hordes of harmful images, tell me to my face these platforms don't know that. They would blur the image and there would be a disclaimer saying this image may contain harmful content. There was a disclaimer that was allowed. Those people were not blocked. I was blocked less than 5 times, a total of 3 times, using the internet for about 12 hours a day for 2.5 days as a child on the internet, getting rained on by predators. I was blocked 3 times. That's not enough. We cannot accept that as the baseline standard that we have for these big tech companies, for the internet, for our government. Where are the solutions? For the people that implemented, signed a bill, or did a thing, where is that? I did not see any of that protection. And again, this is an intentional problem. This is also a solvable problem. We need to understand where this is coming from in order to tailor our strategy to be appropriate and effective.
Well, I have a story to bolt on to what you're talking about that I think will give the audience a greater understanding of this concept. Right now, because of my upbringing, and we won't go into a lot of the detail, but my parents were involved in the sexual revolution and making movies. And my mom was actually played one of the first trans character and lesbian characters, won a lot of awards, and was a real pioneer. And I suffered through their work because basically a lot of Americans and a lot of people when was growing up didn't like any of their work whatsoever. And therefore I got bullied and picked on, and it was kind of ugly. But there's a point to this. When my mom started doing these characters, and my mom is Anne Haywood, the British film actress, and she did The Fox and I Want What I Want, when she played a trans character. She was pioneering the idea of people having the freedom to choose their sexuality, but these were grown-ups. Um, it is very concerning that in 2023, a lot of the porn sites are owned by plastic surgeons, whilst we're pushing a fluid gender um, to kids. I'm not here to advocate should you not have the surgery. What I'm suggesting to you, because I'm actually come from very progressive upbringing, and I actually was part of the, I should say, my family helped create the freedoms that a lot of people enjoy today. But I have a question. When was it okay to profit off of our kids? When was it okay to create gender fluidity underneath adulthood? I'm not arguing gender fluidity, and I'm not arguing any of that. But I am arguing when you could say do it to a 12-year-old or let a 9-year-old see all of these images. And then you go and you trace the money, Pornhub and all of these entities, and then all of the derivative sites. And you start to see plastic surgeons are very vested, toys and tools to allow people to actually get their sex changes are all being promoted by actual MDs. And when you follow the money, you start to realize that there's a lot of money to be made by getting your youngster to be convinced that they want to do something to their body, whatever that may be. So, if on the pornography side, we already know there's a money trail and gender fluidity is a very lucrative business, then I hope that makes you realize that in the predator business, it's more like they don't want to enforce rules because that will get rid of users. And remember, users are their business. How many users can they get on their platform to prove to advertisers that their platform is viable? So they don't want to kick anyone off. But in addition to that, people lying, going into the child section, you would think as soon as a penis is mentioned, forgive me, or a sexual deal, but as soon as a sexual item, a piece of sexuality is mentioned, you would think, well, it'd be shut down. My gosh, the algorithm will see it instantaneously. It
Mm-mm.
doesn't.
Yep.
It does not,
It
everyone.
doesn't shut it
I
down.
mean, it's now if I said, oh, I don't know, January 6th, insurrection, I will be closed and shut down in a post within milliseconds. But if I say sexual anatomy words all in a row, nothing.
Absolutely. Once
And your age, that's even more amazing to me, is that you're able to proclaim, I'm 14, and then they will go on to try to woo you. And that's the other thing parents have to realize, which is so sick. These older men know that younger kids are easily swayed by authority. And I'm sure, Kim, one of the things that you were blown away by was the aggressiveness of these predators. Weren't they freaking aggressive?
Aggressive is a very nice word. It's an understatement. We're keeping our language so soft for the sake of this platform, because case in point, if I were to say the words that these men said to a 14-year-old child, we might get banned from these platforms. We might get shut down. So to your point, I'm saying this in writing over the span of about 72 hours or less. I'm saying that I'm 14 multiple times to every single person. They respond in writing with the most gruesome, detailed, graphic explanations that you cannot even imagine. I'm going to summarize, but I'm not going to repeat, not only because it's disgusting, but because we might get banned if I repeat online as an adult what these grown men were trying to tell a 14-year-old child. There were people offering us money saying, what would you do for X amount of dollars? There were people wanting to do rape play. I can't say that word more than once on this platform because I will get shut down. There were people actually explaining to a 14-year-old child how they wanted to aggressively assault them. There were people explaining to a 14-year-old child things I will not explain to anyone else. But back to the subject of porn, you could tell their minds, they're obviously messed up, to say the least, because they're preying on a child. But the type of miswiring in their brain was astounding. Once again, as an adult single female, I have never heard these types of fantasies that these men described in detail to this child. I happen to be bilingual, so this was happening both in English and Spanish in writing for days, 12 hours a day, and these platforms did nothing. They did not see fit to protect this child. They did not see fit to ping these predators, to essentially put a target on their back, to block the predators from the platform. I mean, what a concept. But once again, these predators were not only talking to who they thought was a 14-year-old girl and other people they thought were 14-year-old girls, they were talking to God knows how many other children. There were people wanting
Because
to.
it's a clearinghouse. They're trying to get as many children to be signed up for either their pornographic, business arrangement, whatever that may be, either doing films or pictures or escorting. And they want to actually get kids involved in those activities. In addition to that, not only do you have that going on, but you also have this section industry that's trying to get kids to convert. You got a lot of stuff going on. And when you break it all down, there's billions of dollars at stake.
Exactly. It comes down, like you said, the shortest way I can say it, there's no money in protecting children. When you follow the money, you see why there is an incentive to destroy their morals, to destroy their, to dehumanize them, to devalue them, to make them completely worthless in their own eyes and in the eyes of the world, because these types of predators are allowed to thrive. I need people to understand this as well. There were men whose first line to a child was that I was around the same age as their daughter or stepdaughter. And then they described what they wanted to do to me. These are people that may otherwise look normal. I can sense people's energies, so I can pick them out like flies. I can tell by their face in most cases, but I could not predict the types of vile things they would say. This, by the way, was zero solicitation. I did not even friend request or message them at all. In some cases, they would say hello first and then ease into the more disgusting, vulgar things. In many cases, that was their first line. So even if you as a parent have safeguards, like I know there are different apps that we actually recommend on b4cr.org. I'm going to post a link in the comments. We have different parental monitoring apps that are effective. So for example, Bark, B-A-R-K, is one of the most effective that we recommend. There are definitely tech solutions that can essentially shield your child from certain predators, and they can also limit their access to the internet. I want to talk about more solutions. That's why I have Mark Stross on here tonight, because parents need to start doing this right away. But the point is that These apps may not block the first interaction until it's too late.
Hmm.
If you're not aware of what's out there, I want you to realize that these apps or platforms may not seem inherently harmful in and of themselves. And the child's friends may all be using these apps. So it's the cool thing to do, and it's totally normal. And it's weird if you don't let your kids be cool and everyone else is doing it, so you should too. I want you to realize that predators are very happy about having direct access to your child via these social platforms where they are allowed to roam without any kind of safeguards in place. So, if you, as the parents, as the caretakers, are not implementing safeguards and boundaries on your internet, on your children's devices, if you're not communicating with your children, if you're not explaining the risk to them in an age appropriate way, your kids don't stand a chance. So, there's so much we could say. I'm obviously incredibly passionate about this. I already was, but after the last few days, I cannot say this more calmly than I'm mustering the calmness to say it with right now. This is absolutely something that must be solved. So let's get into some solutions. Mark, what can parents do if they have nothing implemented right now? If they just have Wi Fi and phones with access to all the
Okay.
information on the internet, where should they start?
So, if I can, I'm going to misbehave, and I'm just going to talk about one more thing before we go into solutions, because actually, this is a perfect classic example of parenting and the dilemma of parenting. Okay, I'm going for it. TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. Come on, parents.
Mm,
What is your excuse for letting your kids be on TikTok? Now, I'm looking at you right now. I'm going to ask you again. TikTok. So, in China, TikTok is owned by Tencent, and the app in China is completely different than the app in the United States. The app in China is a patriotic app designed to actually enhance patriotism for the Chinese people, and anyone that is misbehaving on the app will be actually criticized in real time. And the app is about creating patriotism and tradition in China. Now, let's talk about the American version. The American version is about every goofy, every depraved, every weirdness that we can muster and that we can actually make fun of ourselves and actually create videos, which on the one hand could be really entertaining. On the other hand, we know that TikTok's created movements. We know that TikTok's helping rip off stores in California because now TikTok has what is the most radical way you can go and rip off a store videos. We know that TikTok has helped with protests. We know that TikTok gets people riled up because it's a continuous video. And if you're not aware of TikTok's real core technology, it's a continually swiping, continually moving video. And because the video, as you swipe, is continuing to move and never stops, your brain never has the dopamine um, counter to say, this video has stopped. Instead, the dopamine hit keeps going because you want to know what's going to happen. What's going to happen? What's the next video going to have? It's already moving. Oh, I can't stop. I'm already in it. And actually, that's how TikTok grabs you. So back to the parents. So we now know that the Chinese government is spying on us with the data. We know that because the leaks have come in from China. And we know there are rooms filled with Chinese operatives scouring over our TikTok accounts. It has been caught on camera. It's true. The Biden administration might not want to actually identify this and be honest about it. But I promise you, as a technologist who knows what I'm talking about, this is really happening. I have on the radio gone and told my whole radio audience through the Bulldog Root Awakening show out of Ocean City, Maryland, many times to stop using TikTok. We did a Facebook post and we asked the people, was anyone convinced not to use TikTok? Not one. I can't help you if you think what I'm saying is just a waste of breath and time. But I can assure you, if any of these weird things happen to your kid, you're going to wish that you had listened. So I'm going to make my first suggestion. Do not allow your child to use TikTok. It should be 18 and over. And be that parent that says no. And it's okay for you to be unpopular. And it's okay for you to have said no. And I want to make clear that I'm not a hypocrite. I wish I had said no to Call of Duty and many other things with my kids. And Kim knows they had problems launching because of their computer addictions. So I am not one here to mince words. I've made the same mistakes you are all making. So going back to my original point, TikTok, TikTok. Why? So if you're really serious about protecting your kids, get them off TikTok. TikTok is not sanctioned any longer by the US government for federal employees, and it therefore is not good for your kids. Get them off the platform. It is designed by China to destroy our culture. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a absolute fact. And it's blows my mind that I can lead everyone to the water here, but no one wants to drink, because if they drink, they're going to have to do something really hard. Give up one app. Come on. So next, you want to protect your kids. Well, Kim talked about it. I didn't come prepared with all the app names, but Bark and others. Is it Bark? Bark, right? Yes. And others. There's quite a few of them, and we used one for my son. You can use apps that actually limit, take over the phone, restrict what a kid can actually get into. Those apps are great, but I want to make it very clear to you that your child will follow the rules on your phone that you gave him against the firewall. As soon as he goes to school and he gets with his buddies, he will go to a computer that doesn't have those rules on it and then immediately violate all of your rules. Since three of my kids did that, all I can tell you, and I had four, is wishful thinking you can control them beyond your borders. So therefore, this is super important. It's not teaching your kids really by putting all these firewall apps onto their phone. It's actually being the parent that actually teaches your kids the true morality of what they're doing, and creating kids that will actually say no naturally by you being so emphatic. And you can be that parent that actually teaches your kid no is cool, to be different is cool, and it's all right to be different. And I'm suggesting you stay away from anything that is really bound by adults. Facebook is really not a place for kids. Okay. I wouldn't put kids on Instagram because it makes kids then competitive against each other. And in the competitiveness, then you're also, again, the kid now is being asked, hey, look, Mary down the street is doing better than me, so I want to be more outrageous than Mary. That creates the competition within the kids to compete in social media. And that's when they also get into trouble. So, in my opinion, to gradually introduce kids as they grow older and as they become teenagers, you give them access to more and more things. But social media, the really predatory sites, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, especially WhatsApp, and apps that actually can restrict what you can see texted to each other, that by its very nature is actually designed to obscure information. Why are you giving your kids that? Why are you giving them a tool that will actually obscure what they've actually messaged to their friend and go, oh, that's cool? Yeah, that's right. You want to be a parent completely out of control when you're already been lied to, because most kids lie. And now you're not even interested in knowing what was really said because there's no track record or no record kept of what they're being up to. But you're going to put that on their phone and say that's okay. Oh, because Johnny down the street has it, so they have to have it.
Absolutely.
No.
Another one is Snapchat. I'm throwing that in there rather emphatically because every single predator, almost every predator, asked me if I had Snapchat. That's one of those disappearing messages thing where you can send and receive pictures and they disappear. I'm saying that because we know they don't. But the
Right.
point is that they would disappear from the parents unless the parents have the access to the back end, which they don't. So these types of, oh, it's safe because the messages go away. It's protecting the predator. The predator can screenshot, the predator can retain that information. They get what they're looking for out of that information. The parents may be completely unaware of what's being said on that. So, once again, we are urging you to not only monitor your child's internet activity, but to communicate with them. And there is an age appropriate way that you can communicate with them. I picked my nephews up from school today. I hadn't seen them in a few days and not since this op. I had an age appropriate conversation with my 8 and 6-year-old nephew about bad guys who want to hurt kids. And they got it. They understood. At their age, you can tell them age appropriate things without getting graphic. You can tell them in
Right.
age appropriate way what the risks are. I showed them the guy we arrested. I told them that he would the what's going to happen to them and that more are going to be arrested. I told them the amount of bad guys who came in and wanted to hurt me within minutes, within hours, within days. It's important to communicate the risks to your children, to the children in your life in an age appropriate way, because they need to know why you're being strict, why you care, why you're safeguarding them. I even used the example because they were asking questions. My 8-year-old nephew is very intelligent, and he was saying, well, what would the bad guy want to do? Well, what would happen next? He was asking questions that he was curious about. And when I was telling him things like, yeah, so when you're gaming and someone is gaming with you that you don't know, you may think they're a kid, but you really don't know who they are. They could be a bad guy. They could be a full-grown adult who wants to hurt children. And you're innocent, so you may think he's your friend. And sometimes bad guys like that try to talk to these kids and manipulate them. They know the word manipulation, manipulate them into meeting up with them. So let's pretend that you think you're going to go to the park to meet with your friend, and it's actually a bad guy. And he said, oh, my mom would never let me to go to the park to meet someone she doesn't know, because first of all, she doesn't know them. They could be bad. Like, he recited to me. I was so proud of him. This can happen at any age. You can arm children with knowledge, with empowerment that can help them protect themselves. They were horrified to hear the amount of bad guys that wanted to hurt me. And I did not go into detail for obvious reasons. But kids need to know that you're not just being dramatic, you're not just being strict, you're not just trying to take them away from fun things or their friends. They need to know the risks, and they need to know that they can come talk to you, report things to you, tell you about things, and that you're not going to get mad at them, but that you will protect them and take the appropriate action.
Kim, that is beautiful. I think I'm going to just augment that. And I went on the radio, and I actually have these bullet points on my website, markstross.com. This is super important. Parents, spend time in your kids' world. Um, I've had a lot of parents tell me, oh my gosh, my life's too busy. I don't have time to go into my kids' world. So, dads who are listening to me tonight or are listening, if you have time to play golf, you have time to go into your kid's life. Moms, if you have time to go off and do any other function that you enjoy, then you have times to go into your kid's life. Why is this so important? Because of the statistics. And this is actually from Europe, from Sweden, and from the EU that is ahead of us in a lot of kid protection schemes, have really discovered that the families that actually have the parents engaged with the kids, and actually the parents engaged by going into the same apps the kids are using, and there's engagement and there's dialogue, most most of those families have a better outcome when the kids go into college and then go on to do life, because they seem to have more willpower to resist bad things. Now, why is that? It's because if you go into their world, at first they might think it's bizarre and they might really rail against you going into their world. But if you say, hey, I want to look at okay, you have them on TikTok, then I want you to go and take a look at their TikTok feed with them. I want you to participate. I want you to try to be a goofball, just like your kids are, and post a video with them, because I want you to bond with them in their world. But equally, I want you to be paying attention in their world as to what the pressures are, what is actually keeping your kids in these worlds. Because when you start to experience what they're experiencing, now you can have a productive dialogue of how to restrict it. But to actually talk to them generically, get off your damn bloody app. I don't want you off the app. Stop using it. Well, the kids are going to look at you and go, you don't get me. I'm not going to do what you asked me to do. But it completely changes if you're inside their app and you go, hey, I had a really fun time with you. That TikTok thing's really fun. But you know what? It really disturbed me what I saw that one person do. How do you feel about that? And then the child goes, you know what, mom or dad, that really disturbed me too. Now you're having a dialogue. And from there, you can build a scaffolding of defense because the child will start trusting your edicts more. They will start to trust that you're telling them a truth that they should listen to. But guess what? You have to go in their world first. You have to create credibility. You got to get the creds in order to actually have them listen to you. It's not impossible. And that's my suggestion, Kim. It's more than creating band-aids and saying we will put the little phone in a secure bubble and that phone will be protected from the outside world. Well, that's great, but that kid eventually has to leave the bubble of their safe home and not give in to society. So from my perspective, it's not the apps that are the problem, it's the relationship we as family members have towards each other, the lack of dialogue we're having about what we're doing on our phones and our computers and our tablets. We need to be honest with each other. And that can only happen if you spend the time in your child's life. That's my opinion.
No, I completely agree. There are so many parents that are not aware of what their kid is doing on the internet, and they give them unlimited and unsupervised access. Look, I'm not a parent and I don't give parenting advice, and I have mad respect for parents. It's a difficult job, specifically in today's world, specifically with the amount of intentional targeted attacks on children, on their brain, on their dopamine, on their emotions, on their hormones, on their chemistry, and on everything used to entertain them. It is a very predatory world. Again, what we're doing is meant to empower. What we are doing is not meant to fearmonger. No. What we are doing is making you aware of the opposition and how organized and intentional they are. Because if you don't have a strategy to protect your children, if you're not prioritizing communication and explaining the risks to them, implementing safeguards, but also implementing morals, making sure they understand why, making sure you're not just trying to be the bad guy, but you are actively protecting them from harm. This is so essential. I wish people could see what I saw and what reinforced the fact that this is disgusting. Look, I have a pretty high tolerance for evil and I live to end it. So there's not a lot of people that can face some of this darkness. And I understand that. I have the unique positioning to be able to face a lot of this darkness without fear, but also with the empowerment that darkness is simply the absence of light. Darkness in and of itself is not a thing. Fear in and of itself is not a thing. We are made to be afraid of the big bad guy because we are unaware of what it really is. When you turn the lights off in a room, you may bump into things and be like, I don't know where I'm going, I'm scared. So you may just stay there hiding in the corner. When you turn the lights on, you see exactly what it is. You see it for what it is. You see that it's nothing to be scared of. You see that all it takes is turning on the lights in order to eradicate the darkness. We are not here to just tell you to be scared. We're not here to tell you to keep your kids hidden in your house or raise them under a rock. We're telling you that it takes you and that it is up to you and you alone to protect your children, to educate them, to make sure they understand in an age-appropriate way what the risks are and what to do. I promise you, darkness is afraid of us. It should not be the other way around. We should not be cowering in the face of this evil. We should not walk away from this conversation just horrified. We should walk away with a burning desire to take action. Mark and I can talk and explain until we're blue in the face, but it does nothing unless the actionable steps are actually implemented. I say this all the time. Knowledge is only power if you do something with it. We are begging you to not only take this seriously, but to empower your children, to implement safeguards, to be on the offensive, because the predators certainly are. And it's time to take this seriously because it's only getting worse.
I would like to just end. If any of you are again wondering why do I have any authority to talk to you this way, my current job that I'm just finishing up on is I am doing all the behind the scenes graphics and content that is seen on video boards and anything to do with audience participation for The Tonight Show and for Saturday Night Live at NBC in New York. And my work is now going into NBC studios, and why that's important is I have to pass a whole bunch of security checks. And everything we're doing, we have to pass security. So the way we got the job with NBC was actually going into their world, assessing the problem they had, and spending time with them in their world. And then we created a solution, we presented the solution, and then we had to get their buy-in. And when we got their buy-in, then they allowed us into their world, and now they're entrusting my technology to run the behind the scenes of The Tonight Show, which is quite thrilling. But
Incredible.
I didn't tell you guys to brag, but this is the same thing as you going into your kid's world, like me going in, finding out what were NBC's problems. I had to go and participate inside their world. I had to actually experience what their pain points were in order to actually take away those pain points. And I also had to be able to talk to them in their own way, with their own problems and solutions being talked about, not mine, theirs. So this is about you going into your kids' world, picking up their cell phones at least once a week, spending an hour with them, looking at all of their apps and telling them, listen, this is the deal. If you want that app, then I get the chance to work with you in that app. I want to go through it with you. I want to see what you're doing with your friends. I want to see what makes you happy and sad. What apps and what social accounts have made you depressed this week? Because believe it or not, some of the parents that I'm speaking to right now, your children are suffering on social media. They're seeing people more beautiful than they perceive themselves, and they're actually thinking they're inferior to the people they're seeing in social media. This is a real problem, but you'll never know that if you're not inside their world. You have to go into the world to see these issues. And usually parents, when the child later on in life, usually just as they're going into college, has severe problems with socialization and goes, well, what happened? I didn't see any of this. I didn't know. And then you go back and you discover, well, in social media, these children were being beaten up in their own mind by comparing themselves to others. And by the way, that's what the predators count on. They want those teenagers that are insecure, that don't know in their heart who they are. And they come along and offer them something quite grotesque, but it is still a solution. And the children, some will do anything to be given a solution. We have to realize that's the human condition. So I would recommend that parents get into the world of their kids before predators do. And the more you get into their world, the less predators will ever be able to get in. And that is my ultimate security solution.
So good. So good. I want to also depart with this message. In my opinion, and once again, I'm not a parent, I don't give parenting advice, but one of the most valuable things that you can impart to your children is to build up their self-esteem. If they don't have that type of affirmation at home, if they're not hearing that they're amazing, that they're intelligent, that they're strong, that they got this, that they're beautiful, that they can do anything, if they've never heard that before from you, the parents, when, not if, when these predators slide into their DMs and comment on their posts that you're so beautiful, they will be less vulnerable to that type of predation and grooming. If they are aware that that is the tactic predators use, they will be less vulnerable to those tactics. They will not be as easy to target. They will come and tell you because they know what to look for and what to expect. So build up your children, raise strong children, be the example of a strong parent, and you be the one to build them up. You be the one to empower them. You be the one to help them know how fearless they should be in this world. They do not have to be victims. They do not have to be easy targets. That's a big part of what we do with Veterans for Child Rescue, is to empower people with the tools and the resources and the knowledge to help them not be easy targets. It comes down to that. Predators are strategic. It's like hunting. They will groom children. They have a gradual desensitization process sometimes, so that they desensitize the child gradually to harmful and inappropriate behaviors. However, there are also predators like the hundreds that I encountered as a 14-year-old girl in 2.5 days, posing as a 14-year-old girl on the internet. There were hundreds of predators that came right on out with the violent, aggressive predation. They had no problem with that being their first pickup line. So I want you guys to be aware of the risks, and I want you to know that this is a solvable problem. It's not an easy one. We're not here to make it sound easy. We're here to be realistic about the risk and also the solutions. So I'm going to post Mark Stross's website. There's a lot of tools and resources there where you can learn more. He does a weekly radio show where you can learn a lot more about technology and the advancements and what you need to know, what you should be aware of, and also the solutions, how you can help navigate this safely in today's world. There's also a lot of resources to help you protect your children on v4cr.org or vets4childrescue.org. We have monitoring apps to help you monitor your children's internet safety. This includes Bark and a few other apps that we recommend. There's also a list of apps that we call red flag apps that should not be on your child's phone. After this weekend, I'm about to add about 10 more apps to that list, probably a lot more. Like, it is ridiculous how it is I had to have this conversation, and believe it or not, this is me having calmed down after what I witnessed this past weekend. Not only because it was emotionally disturbing for me, but because it was difficult for me to fathom that this is the experience that other children are having on the internet. Like Mark Stross said, if you're not in your child's world, you don't know what's going on. So please spend time in your kids' world. Please get to know them. Please listen. Please spend the time side by side with them navigating the internet, because in today's online world, they are a target as soon as they access the internet. That is the reality.
That's totally true. It's so sad also, but it's totally true.
Yep.
Kim, thank you for having me on tonight to discuss this. And to the audience, I'm not allowed yet to reveal the title to my book, but Kim will shortly. I've actually just finished the last chapter, and I just got the manuscript, which I have to go through of the whole book. It's kind of exciting for my first book, and that will be coming out. And a lot of what we discussed tonight is in my book. And my book is really protecting everyone from the edge in everyday technology. And yes, surprisingly enough, one of the best ways to protect your children is to simply go into their world. No app, no fancy technology solutions. It's old fashioned. Love your children. Go into their world, protect them. And parents, you do that by creating relationship. Because if a kid knows good and evil and trusts you as a parent and knows that you actually understand their world, they're far more likely to pull out a predator and not rebel against you and go, oh, I can do this without mom and dad. But you know what? Too many kids today don't think they have anything to live for. Too many kids today have had their self-esteem just destroyed because of social media. And for some reason, we're not detecting this. It's not apparent to us, the parents. And since I've had 2 children go through this, I'm not just speaking just to create words. This is real. So get in their world, learn what they love, and then teach them what is wrong.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate this conversation. I hope it was valuable for people. I hope you guys take this seriously. I hope you share this information. Look, Mark and I are not making any money off telling you this information. We're telling you this because we care. We're telling you this because we know too well what we're talking about. We want to help you prevent your children from having to heal from avoidable trauma. That's what this comes down to. Thank you again, Mark.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.